Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Manickam. I work as a scientist at the ICMR-National Institute of Epidemiology. In this session, we are going to see how to respond professionally to a peer review of a manuscript. The objective of this session is to make sure you can handle comments, suggestions and peer reviewer comments to obtain acceptance in a peer reviewed journal. When are you ready to share your first draft? The decision is made when you have a completed draft, the format is ready for publication, and the contents of the manuscript are submitted to a self-evaluation checklist to make sure the principles are practiced in terms of scientific writing. This is an example of a self-evaluation checklist used at the National Institute of Epidemiology. If you look at the items, it broadly covers the basic principles and practice of scientific writing, and therefore the first draft, if it is subjected to a self-evaluation checklist like this, it greatly helps in reducing the number of errors that may appear later on. Once the first draft is ready, what you do is to make sure you obtain comments from your mentors or co-authors. Give them a timeline, generous timeline generally, and make sure you send them reminders and extend the timeline if required. Include or incorporate the comments as much as possible and make sure you have an opportunity to refine and address all the issues that are either missed or misplaced or not articulated very well. Then you obtain institutional clearance, including the journals that you are planning to submit, and then you are ready to submit. Once the manuscript is submitted, it goes through a peer review process. What is peer review? Peer review is an assessment of the scientific research by others. Usually, these are researchers' fellow peers who are qualified suitably and are in a position to judge the work under review in terms of its novelty, soundness and its significance. The peer review process is meant to assist editors in deciding whether the research is suitable for publication in the journal or not. There are several models of peer review available, and we have listed some of them. Single-blinded peer review means the identity of the authors are masked to the reviewers. Double-blinded peer review means we mask the identity of both authors and reviewers. Open peer review is the one where the identity of both reviewers and authors are known to each other at all the stages of the process. Transparent peer review is a process by which the peer review reports are posted along with the published manuscript. The reviewers choose to reveal their identity. There is another model called collaborative peer review process, in which more than two reviewers collaborate, talk to each other and then review the manuscript, and authors could revise the manuscript under the supervision of reviewers. There could be a peer review that can happen post publication. The review is either solicited or unsolicited of a published manuscript. It does not exclude other forms of peer review which we elaborated earlier. What is a peer review process? Peer review is a cyclical process. Once authors submit the manuscript to the journal, at the journal office, there is a desk review or there is an editorial review. Desk review is usually done from the point of view of whether the manuscript conforms to the submission requirements of that particular journal. The editorial review usually looks at, in terms of the policy of the journal, scope of the journal, whether the manuscript can be subjected to a peer review or not. At this stage, the manuscript could be rejected immediately by the desk review or by the review of the editors. Suppose the desk review and editorial review okays the manuscript to go through a peer review process, it is then sent to the peer reviewers, usually 1 or 3, and if it is required, further reviews are also sought. that is at a later stage. Once the peer review comments are available with the editors look at the comments and suggestions given by the reviewers, peer reviewers, and based on their assessment, they may either reject the manuscript or accept the manuscript. They may decide that the manuscript has to go through some modifications, some updation, some editing, some fine tuning based on the comments of the reviewers. Therefore, they may send it back to the authors seeking revisions. Based on these comments of the reviewers, authors submit a revised manuscript addressing the comments and suggestions of the reviewers, which is then looked at by the editorial office, and if they are satisfied, they may then declare the journal accepts the manuscript. If they are not still satisfied, even after the peer review, they may reject it. So, this is a cyclical process. Once acceptance happens, the journal puts your manuscript on the production mode and then it gets published. Let us now look at the common reasons why on the basis of an editorial review a manuscript is rejected. Because the article or the manuscript is out of scope for the journal, and the article does not advance an impact for the journal, or the article, the manuscript ignores research ethics. The manuscript does not follow proper structure or does not follow the formatting requirements. The manuscript may lack the details that are necessary for the reader to understand what is being communicated, lack up-to-date references or higher proportion of self-citations. The language is of poor quality, or it is difficult to follow the logic or the data that is presented very poorly. It could be also due to violation of publication ethics. These are the common editorial reasons why your manuscript could be rejected. We will now look at common reasons why your manuscript could be rejected based on an evidence from a published article. If you look at on the left hand side, the three columns give us proportion of reasons why the manuscript was rejected at the desk level, post peer review or post editorial review. You can see that lack of novelty or originality or out of scope is a major reason why desk review rejects your manuscript. Post peer review rejection happens in almost 50% of the times, and post editorial review also rejects you around 50% of the times. Therefore, it is very critical that you need to pass through the initial stages. The other reasons are listed there, and if you look at, for example, the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, the seventh and eighth set of reasons, most of them are related to the scientific context and the scientific content as they are presented. There is an issue as pointed out or as picked up by reviewers, either at the desk review or during the time of peer review. You can also see that a delay in responding back to the journal after you have received the comments also could be one of the reasons why your manuscript could be rejected. So, there can be number of reasons why your manuscript can be rejected, but then the lesson is we need to avoid all of these reasons to make sure that our manuscript gets published and stands through the scrutiny of peer review. One of the important points to remember is that rejected manuscripts do have a life. For example, data shows that the success rate after rejection for getting your paper published ranges anywhere between 1/3 to 3/4 of the times. Therefore, never give up. It requires a persistence and perseverance and professional approach to getting the manuscript published. What you need to do is to make sure you follow an iterative submission strategy. That strategy is part of the plan. For example, you try a journal that is published more frequently and it has a very quick response time for your submission. Therefore, you can decide if it is rejected for going to another journal. Try an international journal, try again and again, and make sure it works at the end. We have few considerations for handling peer review comments. Remember, peer review is a process meant to give you constructive and useful comments, because the objective of peer review is to make sure the science stands out. So, we need to make sure we are not emotional about addressing them, but professional about it. It may be possible that sometimes you may get comments that are less relevant, some are conflicted. Sometimes there is a load of comments from the editor's desk also. As authors, our objective should be to make sure that we get the paper published. We need to make sure we follow some basic rules of handling the peer review process. We need to be polite, we need to be confident, but on a sound scientific grounds. We make sure we are elaborate, we are scientific in our approach, we are specific in addressing the comments. We are not here to confront the reviewer, we are neither here to evade the issues. Make sure you professionally and methodologically handle the peer review. I will now talk about the step-by-step approach to respond to reviewers' comments. The first step is to acknowledge the reviewers' comments. You can thank them or make sure you acknowledge the usefulness of the comment. And then you refer to each of the comments specifically by the order in which they appear and make sure you address them effectively. One of the tips is to make sure you cut and paste the electronic version of the comments on the left hand side, and for each one of these comments and suggestions you provide your response. You may choose to agree and make a suggested change as per the reviewer's comments. You may and you deserve the right to disagree, in which case you have to provide an explanation as why you are disagreeing. The game is all about giving in at least on some points and make sure there is a professional approach in that as well. You need to respond within the timeline set by the journal. That is very important. We have a recommendation as to in a general format in which response can be given to the reviewer's comments. On the top you provide the title of the manuscript. Very important, you specify the manuscript ID as given by the journal, and then you say that this is response to reviewer's comments. You can type out reviewer 1, reviewer 2, reviewer 3, reviewer 4 separately in separate tables, and on the first column you type out the serial number in which the reviewer's comments are going to appear, and in the second column you provide the comments by bullet by bullet. Sometimes if you get a lengthy comments from the reviewer, you split them in such a way that you will be able to respond to them in a very logical manner. The third column is in terms of your response, and the fourth column ideally should be to indicate where these revisions are appearing, which page number and in which line. Some journals give specifically you to attach the revised or updated manuscript with track changes or without track changes. So, that also you need to keep in mind that that is also part of the response. In this process, you need to make sure when you will agree and how you will agree, when you will disagree and how you will disagree with the peer review. If you are changing the manuscript based on the comments, you make sure you say that we modified the manuscript according to your suggestion, and this is what we have done in particular line and particular paragraph. When you are in a position to not to change the manuscript, you offer an explanation and clarification why you agree with the comment, but then you are not going to change, or it is not necessary to change the manuscript. You offer an explanation or a clarification to make sure you respectfully disagree with the documentation of your point. This is very important, and this is what we reiterate, that professional approach is very much important rather than an emotional approach. While modifying the manuscript, be conservative, point to your changes, provide details in the letter, highlight the changes, and as mentioned, if the journal demands that they need a track changes version, do so. If they do not demand, they need only a clean version, do so. So make sure you follow the instructions while responding to the reviewer's comments. This is a sample response to a reviewer's comments. As you can see on the left hand side, the first column is in terms of the serial number, the second column is in terms of the comments of the reviewers split into one by one, and then the third column is reply to the authors, and then the fourth column is whether we have done changes, and if at all done, which paragraph, which page, which line it appears. And then on the top we have written reply to reviewer comments, reviewer number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. There may be situations, although rarely, that you may have to resolve a conflict. You may have a point where you need to say that I have a conflict I want to resolve. For example, even after the reviewers have given their comments and you have addressed them adequately and very effectively according to you, and majority of the reviewers have given a within quotes constructive comments, and then it goes to the editorial office, but then the editor's decision is to reject your manuscript. So what you want to do is you want to appeal against the rejection decision. So that could be one of the conflict resolution. What you need to make sure is to appeal in writing. There are journals which provide such conflict resolution options. It could be in the form of emailing to the editor. For example, in the BMC editorial policies, there is a section called appeals and complaints. Authors who have a case against rejection, they need to complain following a procedure that is available in the BMC editorial policy. So we need to look for such opportunities to make our case loud and clear. Finally, the take-home messages are: once you are ready with your work completed, make sure your first draft is ready to the maximum extent possible, conforming to scientific writing principles, and then with inputs also from mentors and your head. And you work with your authors, co-authors in polishing this manuscript so that the draft is in good shape and therefore it is ready to be submitted to any journal. Make sure you handle the rejections positively and professionally. Submit, submit, submit until the manuscript is accepted. Make sure you enjoy the peer review game. All the best.